Hello and welcome back to another episode of Lost an Hour, but we found a way. That's right, everyone watching and to all of your friends. Today we are focusing our eyes and our hearts, for we all are lost in our disabilities, but we found a way. Today we have with us two college seniors, Ian from SFSU and Sean from CSUMB. Both are here to open up about two words: education and disabilities. These two brave individuals are willing to speak with us about how they found a path on a journey some would have never believed possible, or for these two students to achieve. Maybe that's because I found that considering 1 in 10 K through 12 students are affected by disabilities. And now, according to lao.ca.gov, reports a larger quantity of students now have relatively severe disabilities. This has increased from a 2.1 in 2002 to a 3.5 as of 2018. Or maybe it's because the state measures district performance based on points, right? Such as graduation rates or chronic absentee list, suspension rates or college or career indicators. Students with disabilities are the most common to establish poor district performance. But that's a debate for another show. We are here to give face to the issues. Let us listen to our guests. Better yet, let us embrace these stories to have a glimpse of understanding the impact the education system has on students with disabilities. And without further ado, let me please introduce to you our first guest speaker, Ian. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity to have this discussion, and I feel that it's a great way for me to move forward. When I think of disabilities, I always think about going back to my childhood, and I thought long and hard about this before I came here today, and it turns out that for me, school was a sanctuary. It was a place where I could be me, where I could truly go out there and excel, and home was a place that I feared that I couldn't be me, and it really turned a blind side, because on one spectrum, I had a disability that I didn't know I had. And on the other side, I had a life that I didn't want to have. And those two were colliding. And at the time, survival, understanding adult issues was truly the important part, surviving. Yeah. I remember when I was a young kid, my grandmother, I was probably, 5 or so. She was trying to teach me how to read, because I always saw my grandmother reading, and I wanted to do everything that my grandmother did, because in my life she was the best thing that I had. And she tried really hard, the best that she could, to teach me. But no matter how hard she tried, I couldn't do it. I couldn't understand. And I don't blame her. She didn't have the means. She didn't have a high school diploma. But I remember this because I ran and hid and went under the table and cried and cried. It was something that I'll never forget. When I finally moved with my dad, they started taking me to school, and they found out that I knew a couple letters of the alphabet, 3 letters, and had maybe could count to 10. And they found that I had a hard time, that too much time had passed, and by that time I was already in 2nd grade and missed most of my formidable years, some would say. So my whole life I've been recovering from abuse and neglect, and at the same time playing catch up. And Once I realized that I was segregated from the other group, that I was different, not only in the fact that I had a private life that I didn't want anybody to know about, but then at the same time, I had to go to these special classes where everybody knew it's because you were a problem. And back then, everybody labeled you as stupid. Disability and education, it's hard. I don't know if they go hand in hand. It's, it was a hard journey.
Currently attending California State University in Monterey Bay. So, growing up, my family liked to travel, or not necessarily travel, but liked to move. We went from place to place pretty frequently. So, having to learn to adapt through the school system, meeting new people, making new friends. Um, as far as it comes to learning, I don't feel like I had too many issues growing up. I moved throughout California up until middle school. So up until 6th grade, I was living in California, moving from southern to northern, eventually settling in Nevada. But as far as having any, let's say, any issues or any problems, I'd say I didn't have any in elementary school. Fairly easygoing. Location wise, the demographic aspect of it varied exponentially. So Southern California, where initially where I grew up, um, I feel like it's predominantly white people. But as we made our way up central to Northern California, is when the demographic changed. So I feel like once that happened, having to learn the difficulties, I'd say, growing up as a white male in this culture. So we had certain locations were high Latino or Latinx, and then we had other areas that were high Asian cultures, Asianx. And seeing that, I feel kind of fueled, not necessarily fueled, but kind of modified how you learned. So that barrier, I guess you would say, having to kind of teach different type of diversities, you could see the difference in the education system. I'd say some were, I guess you could say, like old school, very traditional. They at the time they could have been teaching for 20 plus years, predominantly teaching that diversity, that culture. So they knew how to incorporate different standards to teach correctly or educate correctly. Um, but there were times where, yeah, like you would definitely see the segregation. Is that the diversity would be an implication for students. Sometimes I'd get more help than say another student of a different demographic. Really seeing that as a young child, where to me color, race, diversity, whatever you want to call it, I didn't see it the same way. I didn't see that because this person was brown, or this person was black, or whatever the race may be. I didn't see it that way. Everybody to me was equal. Everybody, it didn't matter if you came, where you came from. I felt that you should have gotten the same treatment regardless. So, but to kind of play back into that part where, yeah, I would say I did get more treatment. Did get more visibility and help, even though I didn't need it. Like I said, I did move a lot, so it was kind of hard to really pinpoint one specific. I would be pretty much in one city, one location for maybe 2-3 years at a time. So, but within that time frame, I would say I didn't see that much. I didn't see very much of that aspect of it, at least up until middle school.
You know, It's interesting because as I made it to high school, I was in these special resource classes. The majority of my classes, that's how I made it out of junior high. And even when I would talk to the teachers and tell them that I would want to do harder things, or I would like to become a chef or an artist or a musician, they would always tell me that that wasn't an option for me, that I couldn't because I had these disabilities, and they would reinforce this idea that I would have to work 10 times harder than everybody just to get one step forward. And I think in high school that really took a turn because I knew that I didn't need to do much. I didn't have to try because they put me in these remedial classes where the teachers didn't expect anything of you, so it's easy to pass. And I think the truth is that swimming, I got into swimming, and that really saved me. That gave me hope that being in the water and pushing myself, that didn't matter if I had a learning disability, it didn't matter if I was abused, it didn't matter if I had emotional trauma, because that was the one place that I could be free. That was the one place that there wasn't always chaos. I could find a goal, I could set it, and I could reach it. Having dyslexia, having a memory processing problem did make my life hard. The teachers didn't understand that for the 20, 30 pages that they gave other students, it would take me 3 hours. I remember one time I was in class and I said the word abandoned. I had to read out loud, and it turns out that the word was abandoned. And even as a junior, people are making fun of you, and it really, really lets you understand that the world is a cruel place. Swimming was the hope for me to succeed, to kind of work through my problems. I remember telling my coach, "Hey, I want to try to get a scholarship. I know that my academics aren't the best place for me, but if I try hard enough and they see that my grades are okay and that I have a great athleticism and that I've hit the 8-letter varsity award and I'm a hard worker, that maybe I can get into college." And their response was, "It's very hard to get a scholarship for swimming. It's probably not possible." That really crushed a lot of my dreams, and I wouldn't say that it deterred me, but it definitely made me want to work harder at being good at something, anything. I don't know. I mean, I have so many stories that could pinpoint what is wrong, but what makes it hard? I mean, how can I work on overcoming these disabilities when my teachers and my coaches are setting limits to what I can achieve? They've already made up their mind that there's something wrong with me, therefore it's not in the cards. And I couldn't believe that. I didn't see that. I I knew that I would succeed because I'm a fighter.
I think the biggest thing though is there's a lot of stigma behind disabilities. Um, I don't know if you witnessed it or not, but it's getting better nowadays. But for the longest time growing up, at least in high school and stuff, there was a lot of stigma behind it, where pretty much if you had a disability, you were less than anybody else. Kind of tying back into the whole segregation. If you were of a different diversity, you were less than somebody else. So I did have my parents. I did have that support system, but my parents were biased. That still stigma still played a part. So my parents were like, "Oh no, there's nothing wrong." I ended up in 10th grade. 10th grade, I ended up dropping out because I was struggling so badly with my depression and ADHD that I couldn't even really sit in a classroom and focus. I couldn't keep the right state of mind to concentrate, just even get through the day. So I ended up dropping out and then eventually just getting my GED because I just didn't have. I didn't have the ability. Well, I had the ability, but I didn't have the know-how to get the help that I needed to push through and finish out the school. Getting the job definitely helped keep me busy, but as far as managing and pushing through the depression and stuff, sometimes I felt like it made it worse. The stresses of having um, other things pushed on me, like you have to have a job, you have to have your license, you have to do this, you have to pay for your bills. All those things, I think, kind of added up over time and probably fueled the depression and made it worse. I was in the United States Air Force for 6 years. A lot of the mindset in the military is kind of you're there to do one job. Doesn't matter what you're going through, you need to push through. But yeah, as far as kind of go back on that scheduling and structure, yeah, absolutely. It allowed me to for time management. Like I knew exactly where I had to be, when I had to be, if I had to be, and there's no such thing as being like late. If you're 15 minutes early, you're on time kind of mindset, right? So everything I did, I was there early. If I was there at school for an hour prior, I was there an hour prior. So as far as structure goes and stuff like that, it worked great. But when it came to disabilities, I said it was hit and miss. Like you had some supervisors or some bosses that would be like, you need to take care of yourself. But then you would have others that were kind of just, yeah, you need to do the job. When you go through basic, they pretty much break you down to be this different person, to kind of learn how to desensitize a lot of situations. So a lot of things that would be super stressful, you kind of don't think of it as being stressful. And I think as you get more time away from that, you start to turn back into your normal self. And I think that's kind of when a lot of things started repopulating, re-showing up. It's probably that 2 year mark is when I kind of started to get my own personality back, and that's when kind of everything started to re-show itself. I don't know if there was anything somebody could have told me at the time frame. It's kind of you have to learn through the process. Somebody could say one thing, but my situation is going to be different than everybody else's. So my anxiety might be worse, might be less than somebody else's. So you might say, step back, do this, do this, do this, which might work for some people, but certain situations don't work for me. So like I do practice mindfulness.
Yeah, I mean, I went to college. I went to Ohlone. I was there for about 2 or 3 semesters, and then, I moved out my home and was living on my own and was continuing to try to go to college, but having a job and not owning a car and trying to hold up with classes. You know the rule: 1 hour class, 2 hours of study. For me, it's 1 hour class, 4 hours of study. And the messed up part is that I'm one of the learners who learns something and truly takes into it and figures out how to make themselves better, how to understand the information, whereas school's set up to remember and regurgitate, not to actually enlighten. And I guess for me, since I have this disability, everything has always been about truly knowing it so that way I can do it well, so I can succeed, so that I could hide my disability from people. And I remember going to college and I tried to I used my IEP from high school to get into these test centers. These test centers say, oh, they're there to help you and whatnot. I mean, they do in some ways. But even for me, taking a test, having a time schedule, hearing the ticking of the clock, hearing the tapping of the gentleman's pencil, and the other dog, the gentleman over here with his assistant's dog, making noise. The gentleman over here eating. I mean, yeah, there's 4 or 5 people in this room, and it's supposed to be a quiet space, but yet all of them are making these noises, and I can't concentrate, and I have the ticking of the time, and as I push and I have that pressure, it makes me mess up, and because I have dyslexia, if it's math, I'm writing the wrong thing. If I have reading, sometimes reading the wrong thing. It was hard. I tried my best not to use those services because they truly don't understand. And I remember I made it to SF State, and I told one of my professors that I'm part of the program where I can have extended time or take my test elsewhere, and they pretty much shrugged me off and kind of ignored me. And I guess that was a turning point where I said, maybe I don't need these people. I have to find a way for myself. I have to be able to go through and find a way for me to succeed. Now I'm senior in college, and the disabilities in some ways have played a huge part in me succeeding today. I just wish that people would have given me the chance to succeed. I remember I was at Ohlone, and I wanted to get into Santa Clara, and I sent in and I sent in my application. I knew I wasn't going to get in, but I was going to send it in anyways. But as I was talking to my counselor, he called and asked the person because he wanted me to save my my fee. And he asked the guy, he's like, realistically speaking, what are the chances of him getting in? And the guy was like, 13%. And I thought to myself, 13%. And I was smiling and I was happy. And the gentleman looked at me, he was like, why are you happy? He said 13%. And I was like, 13%? I thought I had a 0 chance. That means that I'm doing better. That I have a hope of going to a college, a real college. I guess that was the turning point for me. My disabilities were no longer going to hold me back. They were going to be something that would help me succeed. Thank you for having me. I wish we could talk more, but I'm getting emotional, and I don't want to take up too much of Sean's time. I hear he's got some amazing stories, and thank you again for helping. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you very much.
While I was in the military, I was diagnosed with being manic depressant, as well as having ADHD and social anxiety. So for a while there, I'd say for the first year coming into college, I'd say I didn't have the means. I don't say means. That's not the right word. The visibility. Like I didn't have the same the output wasn't out there enough to kind of get the help. I'd say. But as time kind of went by, I was able to seek out what they call the SDR. I'm sure most college campuses have a Student Disability Resource Center. It might be called something different, but once I was able to do that, it really did help kind of grow. Like it helped me learn how to use to benefit myself, to be able to extended test taking time or um, say like my social anxiety, for instance. I'm a horrible presenter. It's almost impossible for me to stand in front of a classroom and present. It's terrifying. It's I don't know how to explain it to the full extent. It's a panic attack pretty much every single time. So the SDR did provide me with ways of being able to get through that. But as far as visibility goes on that aspect, when I first started, I had to go searching for it. I didn't even know it existed. It wasn't until probably, I'd say within the last 3 years, 4 years maybe. Like I said, if I wouldn't have went searching for it, I would have never gotten the help. And I wouldn't be where I'm at today because of it. Because for the first couple of years, yeah, I put in all this time and effort and pushed through the classes, but it was so stressful and so painful to get through them because I didn't have that extra help. I was overstressed. I was constantly, fighting my depression and anxiety, and it took it out of me. So I'd say definitely the visibility needs to be increased a lot exponentially. Like it definitely needs to be more visible to the general population, even if they don't need it. Student Disability Resource Center, they provide the instructors, professors, the knowledge. Like, okay, this person does have a disability. They are going to struggle. They're going to need help. But before, no. Definitely before it was, I'd say probably 3 out of 4 times I think in front of the class. The stress would be so intense that my body would shut down. But now I definitely believe that I have the necessary means. For my capstone this last semester, I had to do it wasn't very long, but it was still long enough that if I would try to stand in front of the class, it wouldn't have worked. I did a 5-minute presentation, self-recorded. It pretty much talked about, where I came from, how I got to where I am now, what this is going to lead to in the future. But that allowed me to record it at home in the comfort of my own space. It didn't necessarily have to be at home, but in the comfort of your own space, no eyes on you. So for presentation purposes, that's how they did it. When you kind of go back to the counseling, talking to somebody, I was able to talk to somebody whenever I needed to during high stress situations. But now that I've gotten to the end, it's like having that support, having people be able to turn around and go, we're here for you. It really did. It really helped me realize that there are people out there willing to stand by you and help you, even in a time of dire need. It gives you that responsibility, and you kind of, once you get into college, you're responsible for yourself. You're responsible for your own actions. I mean, it's like that up until you're pretty much an adult. Like I've been told, your life ends. You're responsible for your own actions, but predominantly once you get to college, then it's definitely on you to make sure that, well, it should be at least, that you're doing everything you can to succeed. So I'd say, once I got into college and started getting that experience, getting that know-how, and pushing through it, then it did help. I think it does fall partially on the government to provide that funding in order to help support the needs of people, students with disabilities. But I do believe that it's also on the students themselves, because if we stop fighting for what we need, then we're kind of setting up the next generation to not fight at all for anything. It's you kind of got to fight for what you want. That's just the way things work. And when you stop fighting, that's when things stop happening. So I feel like it's a 50-50. The government definitely needs to start recognizing more, providing more for students that do have the disabilities, that do need the help. But students definitely need to keep fighting, keep pushing, asking for more to get that help.
I just want to say thank you very much, and I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Welcome back, everybody. Today we heard 2 very different stories. And each of these stories will affect us in profound ways. I think it's important that we remember that it's about inclusion, not exclusion. It's about there's a path, not a roadblock. Remember that when we find somebody who has a hard time, how can we help them? How can we help them overcome these adversities? It's important. Remember, we are all lost, but we do find a way. And a lot of times, that is with the help of our friends, our families, and sometimes a stranger. I hope that's you. Take these stories and go forth and try to think positively about your life.